Hi everyone, this is Miranda. I'm usually better writing, but for this I wanted to talk about it because I guess some things get lost in translation when you write. So a lot of you know my mom passed on June 19th. She was diagnosed with Parkinson's in September 2013, but she had symptoms as far back as 2010 with falling or with, her hand, one hand started to shake really bad. And the doctors told her it was anxiety, or her primary doctor told her it was anxiety because, she was just going through a divorce and everything. And he knew both my parents, and she always had a problem with anxiety or depression. And, he just said it was anxiety, even though, he could have had tests to see it was something else. But anyway, so she started having dementia symptoms around fall of 2014. It was also the same time where she could no longer walk or stand, so she was bedridden since about fall 2014, October or so. So this video is basically because I have a really hard time processing how she passed. Even though I know I asked early on what happens with Parkinson's patients in the end. I always wanted to know. And most people said it was aspiration pneumonia, where you would swallow, but it would go down the wrong pipe and it would go into your lungs. And so, unlike regular pneumonia, it would be where like a lot of food gathered in your lungs, and it would be like aspiration. So I knew swallowing was the pretty much the end game for Parkinson's. It had something to do with swallowing. So my mom was, when she ate, she never liked to sit up. It was basically because, she had osteoporosis really bad, and her back was really curved. So she always kind of liked leaning back when she ate. And when I took care of her for, almost 3 years at home, bedridden by myself. And I always made her sit up when she ate, even if it hurt her back a little, because, it was just common sense, and I didn't want her to choke, and so she did that. But and when they had to feed her in the nursing home too for the last 18 months she was there. And the day she passed, they said they were feeding her breakfast. I guess she had just woken up, and they asked if she wanted some food, and she said no, but there was like a blueberry muffin there, and she wanted a piece of a muffin. So I'm not sure if they gave her liquids before or after she had the piece of muffin. I don't know, but they gave her a piece of muffin, and I guess she started looking like she was choking or turning blue or something, and the person feeding her asked her if she was choking, and she either said no, which if she was choking she couldn't do, or shook her head no. And so they pressed cold blue, and they had the nurses come in, and they did like a throat sweep where some liquid came up. So like I said, I don't know if they gave her liquid before she ate the piece or after. If after, it might have made it worse. And then I was mad because she has a DNR, but it was to try things. You try everything you can if it meant you would come back. If it meant that she'd be on a ventilator or something, she didn't want that. So I was mad when they told me that they couldn't do a lot of things because of the DNR. I just was mad about the whole thing, and the whole thing that happened. I was mad because obviously I felt if I was there, it wouldn't have happened. I know her nurse that usually fed her every day. That day she was, made to feed somebody else, and so they had someone else filling in for her. And so her nurse blames herself too, thinking if she fed her, this wouldn't have happened. And like I said, I'll never stop blaming myself because I always intended to bring her home, in 3 to 4 months, 6 months tops. When I had to have surgery, I had surgery in August 2016. It didn't work. I had to have a hysterectomy in December 2016. And I took care of her after the August surgery, which I wasn't supposed to, but I did. And I knew I couldn't do that in December because, you can't lift somebody at least maybe 3 months after that. And I have, when I take care of her at home, I had to roll her back and forth when I would change her or, feed her and all that stuff. I couldn't do a lot of that stuff while I was recovering. So I only intended to leave her there maybe 3 months, like said 6 tops. But while she was there, I just realized how burnt out I was. I was exhausted mentally and physically, emotionally. It just was like a sudden exhaustion that took over me. And, I would like to tell people not to neglect yourself. As a caregiver, don't do it because it'll happen. It could happen like what did to me. I neglected my health. I didn't go outside. I basically stayed with her the entire time I was home because, she couldn't go, so I couldn't go because you can't leave somebody bedridden at home that long. So I basically didn't go out at all. So I didn't get any exercise. After that I had trouble walking. I still have trouble walking half a block without getting out of breath or my back hurting. I'm completely out of shape. I gained a lot of weight. And it wasn't from eating because I go days without eating. It's just from not getting enough activity. So I really screwed myself up badly, and it was a big mistake. If I didn't do that, like I said, she probably would have been able to come home in a few months and things would have been fine. So obviously I beat myself up about it because I never intended her to stay in there that long. I intended it to be like 3-6 months, not 18 months. She always told me if she got this bad that she wanted to be at Warren Bar because her sister was there for the last 6 months of her life. So I always knew that in the back of my mind. And like I said, when she was there for rehab stays before, for physical rehab stays, and she, it was obviously a lot different than it was in 1989. The food, I guess she said it wasn't as great and stuff like that, but overall it was fine. It's a good place. I believe it's a good place, and the nurses really did care for her. Like I said, her nurse Brianna cared so much for her in that last 18 months that it took her. It really got to her as bad as it was getting to me with the guilt and everything. And obviously when something like this happens at a nursing home, especially, you kind of think there's foul play involved. So I know when they called me and they were telling me what happened and they said she passed, and I'm like, I just couldn't process it. I was like, she is not dead. Are you sure? What the hell? I couldn't process it. I just couldn't. I could not believe it. So when I got there, I talked to 2 nurses and they kind of told me what happened, and then I wanted to speak to the one feeding her. They didn't seem like they wanted me to see her, but I demanded to see her, and she just basically said the same thing as the other 2. I kind of felt like it was scripted, that there was something they weren't telling me. There was some parts of it. And so, and then as I heard later on, there were parts that didn't match up with what some other people were saying. So it's kind of unclear what actually happened in the last, minutes or whatever of my mom's life. And that bugs me because they're not, I don't know, they just weren't being really truthful. So I had a really hard time with this, and I, because of it happening there, they needed to do an autopsy, which I know my mother would have wanted one, but I had no choice. When something happens like that there, they don't give you a choice, they have to do it. And they said that a nurse said they were there 2 hours investigating with the door closed before they took her down to the Cook County morgue to later do an autopsy. I believe they did it the next day, though. And I kept telling myself, please don't let this come back as asphyxia or choking. I just, if it came back that way, it just would have ruined me. And so it was about a day, and when I finally found out it was the main cause, it really, really got to me. I mean, they listed asphyxia as the main cause with heart, hypertension, high blood pressure as a secondary, and dementia as a third cause. I guess, when you're in that much distress, your heart does get that way. So I don't really think she had an underlying heart problem. I think it just kind of was from that. I'm not sure though. But I always had her checked out, and I mean, when she had these kidney stone issues, I had her rechecked out just last fall about them. It bothers me because there was 2 times before this that I noticed something that the doctors didn't, because I was observant, very observant with her. And if I didn't mention these things, she would have passed earlier. The one issue was a medication mishap. Another one was the nurse that visited her at home said she had pneumonia. Turns out it was kidney stones. And when they were going to send her home with a UTI at medicine, it wasn't pneumonia. They asked me, is there anything else you noticed? And I said, well, there was one day of that month where she said she had pain, and she only said it for like a little bit of time, like maybe a half hour to an hour, and never mentioned it again. And so I said that, and like they did x-rays, and they like immediately rushed her to surgery because her one kidney was totally blocked and the other one was partially blocked, pretty much going to be blocked. So they had to, and her stomach was getting, a little bigger. And we didn't think anything of it because she had been bedridden. So I thought maybe your stomach just kind of gets a little bigger. I didn't know. So apparently all that stuff in her stomach was stuff that was leaking from her blocked kidney into her stomach. So they had to drained the whole thing out, and like the whole stomach went all the way down after it was drained, and they put nephrostomy tubes in and all this. She was sent home with them. I had to, take care of, clean them out every once in a while, and it was weird. And every time we would go back, they'd say it's not ready to take them out yet and stuff like that. And eventually, when they did take them out, they had to do 3 surgeries to take all the stones out. But they told me if I didn't mention that she would have been gone, pretty quickly, probably in another few months or less, and I wouldn't have known why. She would have just passed, and you wouldn't really know why. And so I mean, like I said, it bothers me because I said something, she was able to live longer. And I remember that was the end of 2015, and she was saying something about, I didn't think I'm going to be around for Christmas. I don't know if she had an intuition that something was happening. I don't know, but she had the surgeries in like around May 2016. So she may have passed around that time if I hadn't noticed anything. So it bothers me because I was able to notice something, and essentially save her life 2 times, and then not to be able to do it in this last case really bothers me. Like I said, I just wanted her home. I was trying to get myself better, and I just was not getting better. I kept having a lot of different health problems. I was in bad shape. I just couldn't take care of her, and I kept putting it off. And I mean, it wouldn't have been put off too much longer because, we were running low on money, and it's expensive, a nursing home. So I would have had to bring her home by the end of this year anyway. But and then people are telling me, if you had her at home and this happened to her, and I'm saying, well, no, it wouldn't happen if I was there. But it's possible the choking could have happened when I was there too. I mean, it could have. I couldn't do the Heimlich on her because she's bedridden. I know CPR, but I don't know it well enough. I couldn't do a tracheotomy. I couldn't do a throat sweep because I don't have the instruments. By the time I called the paramedics, it would have been too late. And what they did there is, they just did a throat sweep, that they had nurses come in right away and were able to try oxygen and different things. And so, I wouldn't have been able to have those things at home. And I think I would have felt worse had she passed when I was there, in front of me just by myself. I really think that would have made it worse for me, knowing that I couldn't do anything when it was happening. So like I said, they had people to try to do something while she was there, but they couldn't intubate or do CPR or tracheotomy because of the DNR. Like I said, it was rewritten in February as trying everything if it would bring her back. And you don't know if those things they would have tried would have brought her back or not. But I do know my mom, didn't. The last couple of months she didn't complain of pain so much. But she was in a lot of pain, from Parkinson's and dementia. And her whole body was stiffened up. Her hand was really stiffened up. It was getting to her neck and stuff. The last couple months at home, she was suddenly not able to turn her head all the way to the right anymore. So her neck was kind of getting stiffened. And so it was like that, since the end of 2016 or so. I had to get her a neck pillow if I didn't have it. Otherwise, she would have been clumped over like this. When she would wake up, she'd be clumped over like this, in a ball. So the pillow kind of helped it so her neck would stay in the kind of middle position and not curl, not have it so where she curls up when she sleeps. But, her neck, when it stiffened, she was never able to really turn it all the way to the right anymore. So the Parkinson's was starting to go up into her neck. But they did a swallowing test in February when she was hospitalized, because she had a very bad paranoia episode in February. She wasn't eating or drinking or taking medicine. And it wasn't because she was giving up, it was because she was sure that somebody was trying to poison her. And she just started getting really, really volatile, violent. And my mom was never like this. It's somebody I didn't ever see in her. She would start just yelling at people randomly, saying guilty, guilty, things. She thought she was God's messenger, and a bunch of other things. And the nurses felt this because she would do that to them too. And she was like this one other time, like when she first got dementia, for maybe a day. And it lasted a day and it went away. This was going on 2, 3, 4 weeks. And I would try to get her to eat, take the medicine, because she was on Cymbalta, like 60 milligrams a day for anxiety and depression. When you just cut that cold turkey, it's not good. It affects your brain, and dementia, it affects it even worse. So all her heightened symptoms, the hallucinations, the paranoia, the confusion was all heightened. Like I said, I couldn't even get her to eat something. Sometimes she would, but sometimes she wouldn't. And they had to put her in like the geriatric psych ward because of the stuff. They felt she was a threat to herself, which really I don't know. That's the way they saw it. And, I just remember in the doctor meetings how concerned I was with, her not eating and drinking. I felt that was very important because you don't eat and drink, you're not going to live very much longer. They were more concerned about something else, but eventually she did kind of snap out of it. They released her back to the nursing home before she was fully out of it. And at that time, they told me that she qualified for hospice and palliative care, which I didn't understand why, because she was coming out of it, and I just didn't feel she had 6 months left to live, or less, or more. I don't know. I didn't feel that. I didn't feel like it was that time, even though there were signs that maybe I just was maybe not paying attention to. Her weight, she used to weigh about 170, 180, 160 at the lowest. For a long time we were the same weight. She was down to 102 in February. But since February, since she got out of that state, she had her appetite back. She was taking the medicine, all that. The bed scale, I guess sometimes wasn't right. So, sometimes it said 117, so I thought, she's gaining weight, this is good. But when she passed and they weighed her on the scale at the medical examiner, she was 102. So she really didn't gain any weight since then. And like I said, I had to talk to the medical examiner for an hour to try to understand what happened and to just get it out of my mind that this could have been foul play or something. You always think that when this kind of stuff happens. And so he said that there was a little bit of the muffin left in her throat at the top. It wasn't a lot, so it's not like they fed her too big of a bite. We're never sure now if she had juice before or after. Obviously, if she had it before, it might have helped it swallow better. After, I think, would have made it worse. But he said it was just it wasn't a very big piece. And he said that this would have happened. It was an accident, but this would have happened anyway because of Parkinson's. If it wasn't this, it would have been aspiration pneumonia. It would have been, could have been a stroke, could have been something worse. And, so it would have happened. And he listed, the heart thing was happening, probably because of the choking. The dementia he listed as a main, kind of a cause too, because it's similar to Parkinson's, where I noticed when she would try to walk, she'd look at her feet and try to get them to move, and they just wouldn't go. You're trying to get your mind to get them to move, and they just won't move. I guess in dementia it's similar, so if she did shake her head no, she might have meant to say yes, shaking it yes. And I kind of noticed those kind of things happening to her. With the dementia. I don't know. I was just in a lot of denial. I really thought we'd have her around for another 10 years. I thought she's probably going to live at least as long as my grandmother was 81. It was unexpected, but looking at what, other parts, like the weight is the big thing. I guess there were signs there, but I just didn't feel like it because she was more like herself than she had been in the last few months. The reason I didn't choose hospice or palliative is because they made it sound like even if she didn't have 6 months left to live, that they were kind of going to make it that way by giving her morphine and stuff like that. And it just felt wrong. It just felt really wrong the way they explained it. And so my mom was totally against it anyway. And I'm POA, so I said no too. I just didn't feel right about it. It felt really, really wrong. So in a way, I'm glad we didn't do that, because like I said, she was more like herself in those last few months. If she was in like a morphine state or whatever they do to you, and they couldn't bring you to the hospital anymore, it's one of their things, which I was mad about. She probably would have been sleeping a lot the last couple months and would have maybe passed away peacefully, which it's all you ever want. Somebody that you love is to pass away peacefully. You don't want them to pass away in some kind of way like this. It's just terrible. So the medical examiner basically said this was going to happen anyway. Since it was getting up to her neck, it wouldn't have been that much longer. Anyway, so I mean, like I said, he really explained it very well, and it made me feel a little better. But still, I don't feel 100% better, because that is a really horrible way to go by choking. The only reason I know is because I almost choked to death when I was 11. I was watching a funny movie with my cousin, or my Shannon. It was a popcorn seed. I was laughing. A popcorn seed, that something that little could choke. You could choke to death on. It got lodged, right where I couldn't breathe. Couldn't get air to go in or to out. I couldn't cough. I couldn't talk. My dad was at the table. I was shaking my hands and arms around, trying to say, try to show him I couldn't breathe. My mother was upstairs, and he yelled up to her, saying that Miranda's having a hard time breathing. My mom yelled down to breathe into a bag. She thought I was having an anxiety attack, because I've had anxiety and stuff my whole life. But my dad just kept looking at me, and I was doing the arms, and he just came over, and he didn't know how to do the Heimlich maneuver, which I found out later. He did it 3 times, and the 3rd time the seed popped out all the way across the floor. But he said it very well could have happened to me too, because he did not know what he was doing at all. And it just takes minutes. I mean, you only have, I guess, 4 to 6 minutes I read up on before your brain starts to die when you're choking. So if you don't act right away, it's going to be too late. And so he said very much I could have passed that way when I was a little girl, and he would have always regretted it. I mean, obviously it would have tore them apart if I passed away at 11. And that was the first. I almost died twice that year. It was another incident. It was a drowning incident. But I just know how that feels, and I know how it feels to choke. It's horrible. It's terrifying. And my mother was just so sweet, and it just hurts me so much that she had to go that way. And like I said, if she's looking around and they're not doing everything they could for her, I mean, it must have been worse for her, because she'd start, you start to panic, and people aren't helping you maybe, and you're turning blue. They said she turned purple or blue. And I made a mistake of asking her nurse how she looked after she passed, because, like I said, I'm very, I like to be observant. I like to know everything happening to rule out possible things. And I made a big mistake asking her. She said she walked in the room, and my mom had this terrifying look on her face, and my mom's eyes were unusually big anyway, and they were big, really big. And her mouth was partially open, and she was purple bluish. And she said she was looking at her like, where the hell were you? Because that nurse was supposed to be feeding her, like I said, until they took, at the last minute, they told her to feed someone else. So that's the way she looked when she passed. And I don't know how long it took her to pass out or to be unconscious. I'm hoping it was quick, really, really quick, because I just can't imagine her suffering like that for a long time. It bothers me. It bothers me so mad. But they said if they would have tried, I know if they would have tried CPR, it probably wouldn't have worked because it wasn't a heart thing, it was choking. Plus, they would have broken her ribs. I know they told me that. And if they had to do tracheotomy, they'd have to cut her throat. I don't think if she did wake up, I don't think she would have wanted to have broken ribs or cut in your throat. I don't think she would have wanted any more of that pain. And, obviously if they did bring her back and she was on life support, I'd have to take her off right away because she never wanted that, because that's how my grandmother was. And my grandmother, actually, she stopped breathing, or she was having a hard time breathing towards the end. She had a massive heart attack, and she seemed fine, but then had trouble breathing. They had to cut her throat and put the tube in and all that. And so my mom saw that, and she never wanted that to happen to her, because my grandmother was probably like that for 12 hours until they figured out they really couldn't do anything more for her. And so I know my mom never wanted that. I know she really didn't want any more pain. And like I said, the medical examiner said even if they did CPR, or intubation, any kind of thing like that, it would have been very challenging in her case because of her back being so, turned. It was like you have a hunchback when you have osteoporosis. It gets really bad. And that was the main reason why she never would sit up totally. She actually, a lot of times she would lean back and eat, and we'd always say, you have to sit up, We'd kind of make her sit up, and she always felt like she was just fine leaning back, that she could eat anything. It wouldn't bother her. But they had told me she was sitting up when they were feeding her, but like I said, there are things that I'm never going to know about that the last moments of her life, just because they're not, I don't know. Like I said, I don't feel it's criminal anymore. I do feel that, it was an accident, and like I said, this would have happened anyway. So, and, especially telling me it was just a little piece of muffin. It's not like they were overfeeding her, anything like that. So really there wasn't anything that they did that was criminal scene on their part. But it just bothers me. It bothered me so bad. It's just, I always wanted her to pass away peacefully. I mean, that's all you want for somebody you love. And I'm just never going to get this out of my mind. I mean, the only person that would ever make me feel okay about it is my mom herself. And I just know that she can't come and tell me how she's doing, or